I was just going to say, Jenny, don't start the broadcast yet, but you've already done it. That's okay. It's just it's going to be recorded from now, us talking, but don't worry, that's all good.
Oh,
no, don't worry. That's the last. Yeah, that's the last step. But look, don't worry. People won't jump in until hopefully.
It was share my webcam was what I was looking for.
Yeah. You're ready to go anyway. So I think in terms of what to do now, if you see on the questions dialogue, questions will pop up there, so you can just obviously see how much time you've got at the end and answer them. I think turn on your webcam when you're having a conversation with Henry, and that's it. I mean, it's getting recorded, so I'll just edit out this first bit anyway because we've jumped in a bit early, but that's fine.
Hi everybody.
And it's okay. Henry.
Ah, that was fun. Corporate laptops don't let you install GoToWebinar, so I had to. I've got my mobile phone here is strapped to the front of my computer with bonsai wire. That was fun. Like, panicking trying to get my setup. Mental.
I was the same. I was giving a big sort of government one, and it was only a minute before it came up. It was Google Hangouts, and I thought it was a Teams call. Of course, ACOM's one would support Google Hangout. I had to pull out an old Surface Pro I had in a drawer. Unfortunately, I managed to join about 2 minutes late.
I guess the only thing to remember is just to turn your webcam off when you're not speaking. And Jenny, obviously, you turn your webcam off and you just change the presenter. That's the only thing. For the record that we'd like, and yeah, otherwise it's good. I mean, Henry, are you okay to show yourself for your session?
I'm just I'm just checking myself out. There we go. Sharing, stop sharing. Sweet. Okay.
Yeah, good. I'm not going to, obviously I'm not on the webinar, so I'll kind of jump off if any issues. Just I'll keep an eye out in the background because I'm one of the organisers in the background, but I think it's all good.
Can I ask one question? So I can see everybody just now, but I look as if I'm sort of 8-bit Dave sort of thing. I look really pixelated.
You are a bit pixelated, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think it must be something to do with ACOM Corporate, and I think it must be certain things that supports better than others.
Yeah.
That's because you
look. I've had some issues with GoTo. To be like, GoTo has had a little niggling issues like this, and I don't know if we're going to be continuing to use it, if I'm honest.
Teams.
Yeah.
So Jenny, when it's ready for Henry and I to present, and Simon, you'll make us presenter, and then it'll ask us to share a screen. That's the plan, yeah?
Not rightly sure.
Yeah.
So every time someone presents, Jenny will just have to share, make you a presenter, basically. So you just have to have your presentation up.
And then Henry, when it's asked. All right. Okay. What's that?
All right.
So you think my screen just now is a matter of interest?
That's David now presenting. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's fine. So I'll just move on, sort of thing. Hey, Henry, that picture was 3 stone ago.
What was that, mate? I didn't catch that.
I'll just check.
I feel like that photo needs calling.
That picture of me 3 stone ago.
We're on diversity and inclusion now. There we go. That's you.
It does. So it's moving okay, yeah?
Yeah, it's
fine. Yeah, that's fine, David. Have you checked Simon's
perfect.
presentation?
And it's moving okay?
Yeah, should we check Simon's?
Let's check Simon's because we're already going to, but there's already people jumping on, so we probably should do that quickly.
Why did I write my notes? We can dance if we want to.
So Jenny, you've got to make Simon the presenter.
I've just done that.
And Simon, you have your webcam on. Just a reminder, like I said, webcam's off when Jenny's presenting because she's using Prezi Video.
Yeah.
And you can only use Prezi Video with one webcam, basically.
Right, so Simon, do you want to try and share your screen?
Does
Yep.
that work?
There we go.
Yeah, that looks good.
Does it matter that my presentation isn't really a presentation, that I've just kind of thrown some stuff together and made it up? Because mainly it was about talking, and it wasn't really
thought
about me
that's-
anyway. So that's good. I just felt I had to do something, but I wasn't really sure what.
No, that's perfect, Simon. Like we said, when we had a chat, I think it's mainly about the importance of the connectivity to diversity and what it means, obviously, to you and what you do. And I think what you wrote.
Yeah,
I
I didn't have a whole heap to show in terms of presentations about that. It was more just, here's some things that happened to me on the way. And
that sounds absolutely,
you know,
is an insight. I think that's kind of how I'm introducing it anyway, is kind of to get the view from your side of things, you know.
okay, good, thank you. My heart slowed down now because I'm seeing everyone else playing with presentations. It's like, well, I've got some stuff I could use, but
Henry and I, oh, we've lost David. Where's David gone?
I haven't got one at all.
Oh, good. Thank God for that. That's all right then. Okay, because people looked a bit more polished.
Kind of, doing the code, you know.
Just quickly, Jenny, you've found that you can obviously hide people's webcams if the others forget to turn theirs off.
Yeah, I've just discovered that. Just a point of structure. What I'll do is I'm going to do an introduction, and I'll introduce very briefly. I'll leave you to do a full introduction of yourselves, but I'll introduce you very briefly during my first kind of slide, just to kind of say, and just, you know, I'll say who you are and what you do, and then if you could just say hi, and then we'll kind of so keep your mic on for that, if that's all right. And then once we can turn mics off once we get into the presentations. How does that sound?
Okay.
Yeah, fine.
Good.
No problem.
So maybe just have the sharing at the moment for the basic screen. And the other thing actually is everyone keep yourselves muted when each other are presented, obviously, because there'll be background noise, but just try and keep yourself muted. And the screen, I think the screen to show now, oh, I'll turn mine off, is, yeah, perfect. So maybe leave it like that, mute yourself for say 10 minutes before you start, and then Jenny, you kick off. I think somebody's still sharing their screen though.
Hang on, I've lost the visual on GoTo. Where is it?
Maybe it's up the top, or because if you've pressed the little button, the little kind of square with the arrow, diagonal arrow.
So can you see?
And then,
I can see you and you're pressing.
you don't want to share your screen, so turn off share my screen and just keep your webcam on. That's the issue. So you must have your shared screen off and webcam on.
And have I done that? Is that?
Yeah, you've turned your screen on. So if I go sharing, there's a couple of buttons. So there's a little button. I'm not sure what you've done actually.
David, you need to unmute your mic.
Mute your mic.
Yeah, so Jenny, now David, turn your camera off and that should work, hopefully. Oh, we can't hear you.
He needs to unmute his mic, I think. He's shown as muted. No, he's not. Put it in the chat. Is there a chat?
Hi.
Oh.
First word sounds like.
I can hear you, Henry.
Okay.
David. Let me just have a look at the audio. No, hang on a sec. It might be that.
Hey, Macarena. Yeah, okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, so we're getting people attend now. I just don't want to So did you mute David, Jenny, or did you do anything with the audio? No. Uh-oh, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, David, we got you.
Yeah, sorry, it came up that Jenny had muted me. It said that you can't unmute yourself, you've been muted by the organizer, so I was panicking.
I hadn't muted.
So Jenny's frozen.
Yeah, I know, but it came up that said you can't unmute yourself. It says you have been muted by the organizer, and I was getting to panic. I was trying to phone you, Rebecca.
Right, okay. I don't know what
so Jenny, you're frozen. So do you want to turn your webcam on and off? And David and Henry, maybe turn your webcams off now while Jenny presents.
How's it looking? Is it frozen now?
Yeah.
Is it still frozen?
Oh, no, there you are. That's good. All good. All good.
Okay.
So I would suggest maybe mute yourselves. Mute yourselves for the last 5 minutes, and then once you're ready to present, Jenny, you can unmute individually, or you can unmute yourselves. Is that cool?
Okay. Yeah, I think obviously just remember when I say hello and stuff, just to unmute your microphone to say hello and good morning, and unmute. We'll take it from there, I guess.
If you're okay, I'm sitting in a really silent room. I'll just keep my microphone on just in case there's any issues, if that's okay.
Yeah. Of course. All right, so I'm going to jump out now, and I'm going to mute myself. Any issues, Jenny, just drop me a line, or I'll just keep it in the background anyway if I see that there's any issues. But I'm just going to mute myself for now, so that because we've got people joining.
Okay,
so
cool. See you later. Hello and good morning, and welcome to another webinar from the Women in BIM team. I'm Jenny Barrett, and today we're doing something a little different. Today we'll be focusing not on the women in BIM, but in the men in our industry. We'll be hearing from 3 great allies of women in BIM and asking them what diversity means for them and their experiences of supporting better gender equity in digital collaboration and construction. So today's webinar is the importance of allies, how diversity can support productivity across our industry. But first, I'd just like to thank our sponsors who've made this webinar and the work of Women in BIM possible. Our gold sponsor, Glider BIM, and our silver sponsor, Cert Central. And if you're not familiar with Women in BIM, then our work can be described by our values. We're working to attract and promote women in BIM careers, to encourage and support those women in BIM careers, and to advance and retain women in BIM as well. And if you want to find out more about events, membership, and resources and projects such as our mentoring scheme, then please visit our website at womeninbim.org. But before we meet our speakers, who we have with us today, we've got 3 speakers. We've got David Philp, Global BIM Consultancy Director at ACOM, and also Women in BIM Regional Lead in Edinburgh, and he's presenting on behalf of the Construction Innovation Hub. Good morning, David.
Morning, Jenny. Good morning, everyone.
And we also will be hearing from Simon Gallagher, who's Director at Integrated Design Asia and Women in BIM Regional Lead in Hong Kong. Good morning. Hello there, Simon.
Hello, good morning. Morning, everyone.
And finally, I'll be chatting to Henry Fenby Taylor, Digital Consultant with Athenophilia Limited. Hi, Henry. Okay, Henry's on mute there. Okay, so moving on, before we hear from our speakers, I want to think about why we're having this webinar. Why are we asking the questions about diversity? Why is it important? And what are the nature of allies and the role of men in our industry in supporting that? First, clearly there's a moral imperative to include all those who can and are willing to contribute into our BIM teams. But it's important to think, is there another imperative? Is there another reason why diversity and inclusion are issues worthy of our attention? And to do that, I'd like to have a look at BIM teams and how teams think. When individuals and groups engage in design decision-making, they tend towards a binary process of convergent or divergent thinking. We can think of convergent thinking as that focusing down, solution delivery, getting to that single outcome, which you can think of that as an inverted triangle, wider at the top than it is at the bottom. Or we can, teams might think in a divergent way. And that's when they're thinking about problem solving and really opening ideas or opening things out. That's when that triangle of thinking is wider at the base than it is at the top. We're thinking of as many ideas and possibilities as we can. And that's absolutely crucial in creativity, innovation, knowledge sharing, and value transfer, for example. So when we look at different kinds of teams, when we look at a homogenous team, and by that I mean a team where members are from similar backgrounds, similar education trajectories, life experience, even similar personality types. The studies that I've conducted as part of my research finds that actually they tend towards that convergent process of thinking. And that means that they excel in the delivery phase where deadlines and compliance is key, but they struggle to come up with new ideas or develop existing ones. Also, ideas are self-reinforced, so when those ideas go beyond the homogenous team, they're not as robust and they may be subject to more criticism. But when we look at the diverse team, it's very different. We see a much more divergent way of thinking. Excuse me. It's made up of members of varying backgrounds, education, life experience, and disciplines, and they tend towards, they're more able to more widely interpret the brief, come up with loads more ideas, tend to have a wider vision for what the project could be, increase creativity, and because they've tested and experimented their ideas more rigorously against different personalities, then those ideas are much more robust once they go outside the team and potentially less subject to criticism. So the social and personal benefits of working in those diverse teams are really good too. We get that kind of buzz of working with people who give us new ideas and new ways of thinking. And all this compiles to a professional and a business incentive to create diverse teams. Well, that sounds all fantastic. That sounds great. But we don't build teams like this. We don't build teams to be deliberately diverse. Quite the opposite, in fact. We build them with people who do tend to see the world like we do. Since the construction industry has grown from a masculine gendered set of professions, this means women are less likely to be a part of that. And in my studies and observations, I've also recorded that women are less likely to contribute to idea development and less likely to have those ideas heard or acknowledged. So as a marginalised group, how possible really is it to change this entrenched culture? This webinar is set up to ask that question about whether we need allies that are in the majority population in our industry to help us achieve that gender equity and thus diversity in our project teams. And it's this diversity that will help us foster better project success. So if our alliances in the industry are based on similarity, then it's clearly counterintuitive for us at the moment to work with someone that exhibits obvious difference, and difference is the key to success, but it's also the thing we find hardest to build our alliances on. And so this is limiting our creative potential. So are our allies vital? Are they the key to unlocking this potential? But then we can flip that question and we can ask, do women really not need a patriarchal assistance in achieving gender equity? These are the key questions that we want to be asking today. So unusually for women in BIM, and you know, we're very conscious of this, and it is a deliberate attempt, we have convened an all-male panel, which is very unusual for us. But all three of our guests today recognise the power of allies to unlock the BIM team's productivity. And we're going to hear from those soon. If you have any questions, by the way, and you would like to ask our panelists some questions, then please put them in the dialogue box, and I'll attempt to pick those up at the end, and we'll have a discussion around the questions afterwards. Okay, but first I'm going to pass to David Philp, and who will be giving his insights into productivity and diversity in BIM teams.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you everyone for joining today. Jenny, can you make me presenter if that's okay? Thank you very much. I've just done that. Excellent. I'll just be 2 seconds. Hopefully I shall seamlessly move across my screen. Two seconds.
Seamless, David, seamless.
Seamless, Sarah, seamless. Can you see any screen at all?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Which one is your can you see my presentation, Jenny? Sorry, it doesn't show on the...
We can see go to webinar.
Okay, I'll try and move this 2 seconds. Apologies. Here we are. Hopefully you can see the presentation now.
Yes, looking good.
Great stuff. Thank you. Well, I'll start again. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's session. I'm David Philp, and as Jenny said, my day job is I'm Global Consultancy Director for BIM at AECOM, but I'm also seconded into the Construction Innovation Hub, and I wanted to use today to talk about our programme and what that means to us in terms of the importance to allies. But I should also mention, you know, I'm hugely honoured to be part of Women in BIM as well. And as Jenny said, I'm actually the regional champion for Scotland and indeed Edinburgh as well within there. So for me, it's hugely personal as well within there. So 15 minutes, I'm going to take you through our journey within the Construction Innovation Hub. And I think it'd be remiss of me, maybe some of you have not heard of the Construction Innovation Hub. So I'll give you a little bit of a backstory before I take you into our presentation. So the idea is, you know, over the years, sorry, just my presentation's filled out. So the Hub is basically one of 3 core partners in the Transforming Construction Challenge, along with the Active Building Centre and Transforming Construction Network Plus. And for those that remember, it was launched back in 2018 with £170 million of funding. So it's a big programme within there. And the Transforming Construction Challenge, it was born out of the UK Research and Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund. It is backed by, I'm sure many folk have heard of the construction sector deal. But essentially, we're working across industry, academia, and government to make fundamental transformation in construction a reality. So it brings together world-class expertise from Manufacturing Technology Centre, Building Research Establishment, and the Centre for Digital Built Britain. And our core objective is to transform the UK construction industry. And actually, we think that together we'll change the way we build our infrastructure, we design it, we manufacture, but also how we integrate, connect with our built environment as well. So one of the things is we want to be a catalyst for change. And actually, to make that catalyst for change, that we think diversity and inclusion is one of the biggest challenges, but at the same time, we think it's one of the biggest opportunities that we actually face our built environment today within there. So for us, we realise that the talent pipeline to the new solutions that we want to achieve is needed around our themes of digital, manufacture, value assurance. So diversity is massively important to our programme. And what we're seeing is when organisations consist of people from the same backgrounds, they often leave diverse ideas and perspectives behind. So as part of our programme, we really want to make sure that we are seeking to champion diversity for sector transformation. So for our programme, the whole inclusion, diversity agenda is hugely important to get diverse ways of thinking into our programme for transformational change within there. So for as you can see, it's pivotal, we think. It's not a nice to have, but it's actually for that modern built environment, especially around about digitisation, it's hugely important. And I'm sure everybody has seen all the reports that are out there just now in terms of the backstory. We've faced as an industry, I think, in the UK, a number of what we often call wicked challenges for many years. There's been a series of high-profile reports calling for action for a change of factors. And obviously one of today's things is actually talking about productivity. I think it's fair to say productivity in construction has lagged behind that of other sectors and as an economy of a whole. And I think it's fair to say even a modest improvement would have a significant factor in positive impact within there. And if you look on the right-hand side to the Farmer Report, Review of UK Construction Labour, perhaps probably one of the most worrying of all is the fact that pure physical capacity in the construction industry to deliver for clients appears to be in a serious long-term decline. It's probably a combination of ageing workforce, low levels of new entrants, and you can overlay that, especially think about what does that mean in terms of recession and accelerated shrinkage. So I think we live very much on the threat of, how do we sustain our industry? And to do that, we think at Hub, we need to attract new entrants and modernise our sector. And we need to think about doing that differently as well. It's not just about bringing people in, but actually trying to make sure we do things differently. And if you look at those same reports, I think one of the things is, you look at the safety concerns, Oxgang School, wall collapse, the tragedy at Grenfell. We can't continue just to replace like for like. We need to have new, diverse ways of thinking about how we do things. So we believe at Hub, we've got a perfect storm, significant challenges, but also emerging solutions, especially around about digital and advanced manufacturing that needs new people coming in to help us within there as well. So one of the questions that we often ask is, okay, we kind of know where we are just now, but actually where are we going to be in 5, 10, 15 years from now as well? We're probably at the point where technology is changing at a rapidity that is probably unprecedented. So where are we going to be in years to come? And what happens when the next generation enters a construction arena? I think it's fair to say, I'm sure you've seen it in terms of, see from other speakers as well, in your previous Women in BIM conferences as well, we're probably starting to foster new relationships with technology. And our professions need to extend, and I think this is what Jenny was talking about in terms of diversification, starting to think about extending the areas of expertise into new disciplines where the boundaries of our existing construction domains will blur. And we think that's going to blur with advanced manufacture, advanced computing, and at the same time start to think about advanced societal needs as well. And apologies if you're seeing a bit of a halo coming in. We've got this unusual thing that's happening in Scotland today called sunshine. So apologies about the orangey glow within the background, but it's actually quite nice for me. But what we're seeing is, we go through these periods of change, 5, 10 years from now, how are construction professionals going to race with machines? How are we going to work alongside, high performance computing? Well, what we think that's going to require new skills and knowledge. And actually, we think that these new challenges, new opportunities are going to require real diverse thinking and the diverse teams that Jenny talked about to solve them. So we really need inclusion and diversity to actually deal with both here and now, but especially in terms of the longer term agenda as well. So again, as we mentioned, it's pivotal to make sure we can move in as well. And actually, sorry, for me, this is really personal as well. So we think about Generation Y, the people that are going to come into this. So you can see the little girl in the top left. That's my daughter, Sophie, within there. This is one of her, she's had me in construction. She's had her granddad in construction within there. So she's been exposed to it. But she met lots of role models from the likes of Thomas Telford at the Institute of Civil Engineer. She met with other members of Women in BIM. You can see down the bottom left Rachel at Autodesk that talked about technology, so she can use the tools. And she's known Women in BIM chair, Rebecca, for many years as well. So for me, one of the biggest and most powerful ways to increase diversity and inclusion in our built environment is to have visible role models who are going to inspire current and upcoming generations as well. So one of the things I think is hugely important is positive role models for young people within there. The more we can do to increase the visibility of women in powerful technical roles and within business, I think it's where the more the school leavers, such as my daughter, will consider the built environment as a viable career path. And you can see there, my daughters went from, initially, that was probably thinking back about 8 years ago now, civil engineering, meeting people from Women in BIM, to now, that was last week. She's now about to start at 14 a modern apprenticeship in civil engineering. So she's been exposed to positive role models, but the next big part is to couple that with positive mentorship as well. How do we nurture? How do we retain talent within there? And I think that's been a key thing, especially in my own journey. I've had positive role models, but at the same time, through my career in construction in the built environment, I've also had people who are going to mentor. And I think for Women in BIM, it's a huge thing, positive role models, but couple that with mentorship through career as well, I think is hugely important. So if anything, we talk about tips and trips for Generation Y, having positive female role models that show inclusion, then show new ways of doing things, but also to make sure that those people are going to be retained as well through mentorship. Hugely, I think, important in terms of that journey within there. And I think at the same time, we're in real competition. You think about Generation Y, what that means as well. We are in a period of competition. How do we attract young people into the built environment? Our digital natives, young people, they are ripping up the rule book, especially in terms of BIM and digitization. Things that their parents or grandparents do. They're using technology to rewrite and redefine the way we've been doing things for many years. They're looking at Google, they're looking at like some McLaren, going, you know what, I want to work there. We don't care about status, but actually we want to work somewhere that's collaborative, innovative, and probably technologically advanced as well. So you look at that, you think, gosh, I probably want to work there. Would I want to work there? And I think that's a problem, is a perception of construction is still seen as very labour intensive, male centric, it's probably seen as unsafe, heavy carbon burden. So we need to change the narrative within there as well and repurpose as diverse and progressive. And you look on the left-hand side, we are generally competing for labour against other cool advanced sectors from technology, from manufacturing. And I think one of the things we've got to think about going forward as well are trying to make sure that skills are transferable from computer gaming to industrialization as well. I think as well for Generation Y, one of the things that we're seeing is, we've got to make sure that parents and carers see, the early year educators can envision construction as progressive and inclusive, irrespective of gender. So I think we've all got an opportunity to promote collaborative learning in ongoing ways. So I think we need to reinvent and change the narrative to innovative and technologically advanced in terms of what we're doing. So this is our vision of the hub. We need to change the way we build our buildings and infrastructure, the way they're designed, manufactured, and integrated. So where would you want to work if you're a new entrant, there or there? So we think there's a huge job in terms of modernisation of our sector that's going to help encourage new entrants, Generation Y. At the same time, we think there's a huge piece around about education within there as well. And if you look in terms of the educational journey, apologies, my computer is going onto lag mode. Just 2 seconds. You look in terms of the educational journey. Sorry, just 2 seconds. You think about where are we now? 60% of the work of our children will eventually do, when they come into construction. It's probably not been invented. I never thought I'd have a career in BIM and digital. You think, what are they going to do within there? So in terms of this disruption, we also have to disrupt the educational paradigm shift and actually think about how we teach. It's critical that we meet this revolution by nurturing valuable and desirable skills for a modern built environment. We need to think about the ability to innovate, to think critically, and I think this is one of the things that Jenny said as well, but at the same time think about not just digital but compassionately as well. how are people going to think in terms of, carbon challenges, societal challenges? So we can't just focus on STEM alone, and I think that would be quite reductive as well within there. So when we think about this, I'm completely in agreement with Jenny in terms of, we can't often predict things, but we must think about coexistence of divergent and convergent thinkers to set the dreamists and the realists to work side by side in terms of what we're doing. So for us, education and academia, how they respond rapidly to industry in Generation Y is hugely important. One of the things in terms of tips as well, we kind of think, what are the skills going to look like for 2030 as well within there? And one of the things is, I call it, if you like, the T-shape. You think about the forces that are converging, we're probably creating an unprecedented and timely opportunity for organisations to embrace inclusion and broaden their horizons. But at the same time, we've got to think about ourselves. And I think this term of, T-shape, this is me, this is me now, but I've been in construction for over 2 decades within there. And I kind of started as an I-shaped person. I was deep in terms of construction management, engineering, and I did not think there was anything else out there. But then I realized I had to think about other things. I had to think very much about people that were in FM, people that were in design. So I increasingly, through the life cycle of my career, started to think about the work of others, and I started to become a T-shape. I didn't become an expert, but I looked in terms of inclusion, I looked in terms of diversity. I started to build a knowledge across the whole built life cycle and started to think about how I worked well with others, more disciplinary. And I went from that to start to understand operation, consultancy, and I started to become not an expert in deep, but I started to think about digital, and I started to move from an I-shaped person to T-shaped to now maybe a comb type model. So I think as well as changing industry, we've got to think about what we can do ourselves within there, how we'll make a shift in terms of new skills and knowledge, and what we can do to make ourselves more T or comb shaped within our own journey. And I know that's been hugely important to my own journey skills within there as well. So finally, just some tips. If we summed this up, how do you become an ally? So I think it's axiomatic that everybody knows we have to become more diverse within our workforce, but probably one of the questions is how within there. I've talked about some of the things that I see, and I think one of the biggest barriers has been a lack of mentors and a lack of female role models. So I think if we're going to have, if you like, huge impact in gender diversity, especially in our built environment, we need to put a real positive focus on mentorship and sponsorship to create a career development and very much a diverse pool of talent as well. I think the mindset is hugely important, and creating an inclusive workplace culture within there, making sure that we're thinking about laying the foundations for entire organisation value where we all play our part within there. So hugely important. Attracting and recruiting, let's make sure that we can recruit from a large and diverse pool of talent. On the right-hand side, I think it's fair to say that, in terms of COVID, we've seen the opportunity of flexible and remote working. I think COVID's showing us the opportunity, especially when people, life events want to return, we need to build this in as well. Something I'm really positive about is changing the narrative. We need to change our narrative. We need to be better at communication. We need to share the good news stories and make sure actually folk can see the opportunities and diversity within there as well. Well, how do you do that? I think collaboration is key. We're never going to solve inclusion and diversity alone. We need to share ideas and ways of thinking. And I think diversity is not a single company problem. We need to share. So I'm going to finish up with one part. Number one is when it comes to diversity and inclusion, I think we all must play a part. But also I think we've got to put our head into others as well. We need to think from another person's perspective. And if you do it, you might understand someone more, and you might see that need for change more as well. So you've heard our story. At the Hub, we are hugely looking forward to working not just now, but with Women BIM. We're going to be following up, we're writing a blog piece, and we're trying to make sure we can get the message out to our supply chain as well. So thank you for hearing our story, and we look forward to the rest of today's webinar.
Thank you, David. That was fascinating. That was really interesting, and particularly taken with the idea of kind of what we need to set in place for Generation Y, because it sounds to me from what you're saying that really we need to act right now. When you talk about putting role models in place, the visibility of powerful you know, of women in powerful tech roles and kind of the change we need to make to education. It sounds like, you know, actually, if we're going to get it right for the next generation, we need to kind of do something right now.
Yeah, I think we've got a great opportunity, especially women BIM as a vehicle.
Okay, thank you. Brilliant. So on that note, I'm going to change the presenter responsibility over to Simon Gallagher, who's our next panelist. And Simon, are you okay? Are you ready to present?
Yeah.
Share your screen. Perfect.
Yeah.
Lovely.
I could scare you all with my webcam, but I don't know whether you really need it. I can always turn that on and say hello or something. But anyway, okay. So thank you, David. I can't really top that, and most of mine is going to be anecdotal and some little stories and what have you. It's not quite as exciting as what he was talking about, but I can agree with much of what David has already started with. So I'll introduce myself first and foremost. So you don't need a webcam because there's a perfect picture of me just there. I'm the one on the left, and essentially I moved to Hong Kong in 2012 at my wife's behest. But before that, I was working in the UK for many years as an architectural technologist. And one of the things that, before I had a family, before I was married, before I worried too much about anything much, if I'm honest, I was busy trying to get things out the door, but I was working in an environment, and I was definitely an I-shaped person, as David said. I did not really think much outside of what I was working on. And the environment I worked in, architectural practices usually they're comfortable environments to work in, and there is knowledge sharing, but in terms of inclusivity and diversity, it wasn't particularly diverse. It tended to be male oriented, and also in terms of the backgrounds of people, we all tended to be quite samey, if I'm honest. So moving to Hong Kong and having to experience, it was quite a culture shock at first, if I'm honest. I was like a kitten, you know, sort of put into an exciting room, just suddenly, what's all this? It was a bit much. And much like David, I never set out to be a sort of BIM guy. It just kind of happened, and that everything kind of started to mushroom, and the need for BIM skills started to grow. And I just found myself in a certain place at a certain time with enormous projects as you get in Hong Kong. As an example, I'd be working on sort of 55-bedroom hotels in the UK, and then come here, and then it's, do you want to extend an airport? Do you want to build a, do you want to build a railway in the Middle East? It's just another level. So some of the projects I worked on, Midfield Concourse here in Hong Kong, and Doha Metro Gold Line. So that's a whole railway line in Doha, in Qatar. Stuff for, so WSD is Water Supplies Department, and DSD is Drainage Services, and they're Hong Kong government departments. And my current major project is the IWMF incinerator, which is 16 hectares of reclamation. Only Hong Kong does things like this. It's completely bonkers. 16 hectares of reclamation with an incinerator on top of it, waste to energy, all supplied by boats that have municipal waste on in containers. It's off the scale. It's the sort of thing that you just wouldn't really get to work on in the UK. So work aside, and you can see from my picture, I went from being an I-shaped person to a sort of O-shaped person, because I turned into a nice fat family man, which is nice. Start putting on weight, which is good, nice and healthy. And let me give you some examples of the kind of thing I worked on in the UK. Very techie, very, well, you could say precise, but there's a great deal of planning and thought that goes into it, but it's nothing like the scale of the things that I've been exposed to here. And as a consequence, bigger projects need much, much bigger teams. Let me just flick through these. So see, I don't know about you, David, but I've been using ArchiCAD since 1998. I feel like an expert now. But there you go. Not really. It's bizarre how it's kind of worked out. So I will quickly mention the sort of historic legacy of drawings and the fact that BIM really, drawings in a way become like a byproduct. So you get a nice little thing. There you go. All of that goes into your door. Exciting, isn't it? The point being that, there we go, there's some benefits. I'll flick through this because I did say that I would have some sort of presentation to excite you all. Just so you know, I know what I'm talking about, eh? And look at that. I've even got something that says the same thing about productivity. So that's what I was coming to. So yes, productivity is a problem, and we work in an environment, even engineers are creative. They might try to pretend they're not, but they are. So creativity and diversity, lack of diversity is anathema to creativity. The more diverse, the more creative. It's beneficial. And I've seen that firsthand. I've definitely seen that plucked from the UK and dropped down in Hong Kong. It makes a huge difference to the angle on thinking on projects. It has, oh, there you go. Here's his Mr. McLeamy and his curve. This must be David's arch nemesis. And similar sort of thing here in Hong Kong, as has been touched on, is this demographic as well. The fact that people are getting older and don't really fancy working on sites because they look fairly unpleasant, especially in Hong Kong. It's extremely hot working in summer. And it's dirty and it's very male oriented. You get the kind of idea. People are getting older. And prefabrication, which is not a new idea, and here's an example from the UK, because of course the UK is first to do everything, eh? But 5,800 years ago, which is an example of prefabrication. So the idea in itself is not new, but it's very much easier if you have some BIM. And here's an example from University College London with torpedo bolts and some BIM for prefabricated panels. They don't do an awful lot of that here in Hong Kong, but it's gaining traction. It was big in the UK when I left, and I think it's grown. I suspect it's probably much improved. I don't really know. I'm a bit out of touch with what goes on in the UK these days. And in Hong Kong, it was mandated. So there was a circular. This is how BIM is pushed in Hong Kong. They just sent out a letter saying, from January the 1st, 2018, you will do BIM on all your projects. So I kind of found myself caught up in all of this. And now BIM is in big demand. And one of the problems we've got now that I'm a director of a local company is we have a big problem employing people. I'm sure you know what a CDE is. Some models. I'll just flick through this. In fact, you probably don't need my screen anymore if I'm perfectly honest. You like that? Yeah, that's fine. I'll stop. Oh, no, I won't. I'll go to the beginning so you know who I am. How about that? So we have a big problem with recruiting and maintaining our current workloads with our current staff. We like to take people on and train them up, but first of all, they don't exist in the sense that the skills are lacking. And if you reach out more to a greater, more diverse audience and don't turn down people saying, for example, women sometimes, my wife's an architect, they leave the industry because they have children, and then they struggle to get back in again and be competitive again. So my wife has been through that. We've got 2 daughters, and that has been an issue for her, although she has got back into working quite quickly. And in Hong Kong, they do things differently. You don't get anything like the kind of maternity leave. The actual maternity support you get here is very poor. And they've only just talked about extending the amount of time you get the allowance. So I think in the UK it's something like 6 months that you get for maternity leave, and you can arrange things. There's flexibility. Here it's I think it's 10 weeks, which they're talking about. I think you extend it to 12, but it's really nothing. And the idea is that you go on maternity leave 2 weeks before you pop, basically. So then effectively you only have 8 weeks. And you expect to go back to work with an 8-week-old baby being given to someone else to look after. It's a bit unrealistic. So the way they do things here is a bit of a shock. And having been through it twice now, my wife's coped admirably, but that's mainly because of my mother-in-law helping. And if it wasn't for the support, I don't know how people would do it, if I'm honest. It's always assumed that you've got support, but I don't know how you do it if you don't have support. And so that's that. And then of course I've got 2 daughters, and they qualify for women in BIM. And I would never accept anyone telling them that they can't do something because they're female. I don't see why they should be limited in any way. And certainly my wife would not take any kind of nonsense about someone telling her that she couldn't do something because she's female. So really that's my motivation, has been especially keen since moving to Hong Kong, and then especially keen because of my 2 daughters. And really I can see, yes, I from what David said, there's many things there that you could take. For example, we as a company, we only have about 10 staff in Hong Kong, but we have a back office in Kolkata in India with about 60. We have no sort of limitations in terms of employing male to female ratios or anything like that, but just naturally we have, it's a very small percentage, but we have, say, 5 women and everyone else is male. It's just the way it is, and it's not deliberate. So to try to balance that is not easy. And then to try to recruit and retain female employees, especially if they go away and have children, you need to be flexible as an employer. So we are prepared to be extremely flexible as an employer, but we are small and we do have mouths to feed and needs to meet. So we do struggle. I have to admit, we do struggle. We do try to be flexible, but it's not always easy. Basically, that's probably it for me. Would anyone like to interrupt me and tell me what to do next? I'm kind of stuck.
No, that's fine. That's great, Simon. It's quite it's really interesting to hear in that last bit actually that sometimes maybe being an ally, we're talking about ally, I mean, we've kind of framed this around being allies in the workplace and supporting women in the workplace to kind of resolve these kind of equity issues. But actually, you've raised some really important points about how being an ally might be something that you do outside the workplace, because it is that kind of support to be able to work that is very limiting for many women. So yeah, there's obviously a kind of social ally role that's kind of implicit in this discussion. So it's really interesting to hear your personal experience of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so move now for something a little bit different. We're now going to rather than have another presentation, I'm going to move to Henry Fenby Taylor, and we're going to have a little bit of a chat about his experiences of being an ally in the BIM industry. So Henry, if you'd like to turn your video on, I'd like to see you whilst I chat to you. Would that be all right?
I am certainly trying. I am on my mobile, so let's get this right. Let's get this right. I am holding my camera. That's fine.
Right.
So hopefully this will work out. Thank you for inviting me. Nice to be here. Yeah, I thought a different format would work better for me, entirely selfishly, because I just prefer talking to people than talking at people. I mean, it just makes me so anxious. So
that's absolutely fine. I think it's quite a good thing to do, actually, having heard the previous two presentations. It would be quite nice to kind of just reflect on some of the really interesting experiences and insights that David and Simon have both raised. And but as with anything to do with diversity, when I listen to, I don't know about you, but when I listen to some kind of things, I kind of have these sort of there's a little thing sitting on my shoulder going, yeah, but this all sounds great, but can this actually work in practice? Is it, you know, these are all great messages about visibility and support and compassion. I'm hearing some great words this morning. But how does that actually work when you're up against deadlines in practice? And it kind of then suggests that it's got to come from some kind of inner motivation. And this whole, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, as Simon said, it's about women's role in society, as well as, you know, as David said, women's ability to be visible in the hierarchical structure. And actually, this is, it plugs into a much bigger and wider feminist issue, and what feminism is and who it's for, and is it just a women's problem? So I'm going to start with challenging you, Henry, and asking, are you a feminist, Henry?
I'm just going to put my mic down and walk away. No. Well, I've agonized over this.
Good.
I've been speaking to Vicky about this. I've taken lots of walks, and it just keeps bubbling up in my mind. Everybody's mentioned women so far in their lives. I'm going to do the same. I was raised in a feminist household, which is interesting. My sister is an HR professional and did a degree in women's studies, and has always been my kind of the person I'd like to antagonize the most about feminism, but also I've always, you know, that's just because she's my sister. So am I a feminist? So having grown up in that environment, I've always kind of been a bit skeptical about men who say they're feminists, because there's so many angles and branches, and, you know, there's ecofeminism, you know, there's radical feminism, there's second wave, third wave. Where do I sit in that? And I was talking to her in the car park at Tesco's, and she said, well, I mean, you know, take a step back. And so I Googled feminism, the advocacy of women's rights on the grounds of the equality of the sexes. And I was sitting there in the car park like, all right, okay, fine, I'm a feminist, but I'm still not comfortable saying it.
Many women aren't either, you know, to be fair.
Yeah, it's difficult because it is an equity thing, and there is a lack of equity, I think. So when it kind of came to you know, what I was going to talk about today, I was thinking, you know, what would I tell men? And it's a lot of different messages and there's a lot of different things, and so I just did a little trawl on the internet to see what men think about women. I don't recommend it. So I thought I would address those people first. Hi guys. So I've got some news for you. Women, and this might be a shock, women are people. It's true. They are unique. They have their own desires, their weaknesses, strengths. They aren't a problem to be solved, and they aren't that you can't just ban them all together and go, women be like this, because women not be like that, women be like people. So yeah, so that's kind of point one for me, is that women are people. And I really shouldn't have to say that, but I just feel like having been around for long enough and seen all this stuff, it feels like it's something that actually needs saying. But you know, you've got to do what you've got to do. So point one, women are people. Fact. Okay, so having said that, I think a lot of people in the built environment that I come into contact with see themselves as not being part of the problem, or, you know, trying to work to solve the lack of equity. And we do have biases, and I do treat a pretty face differently on impulse than I do other people, and it's something that just kind of bubbles up out of me, and I feel like I have to react to that, and there's also I have to kind of be mindful of that and do something about it. I think that's the same.
How do we deal with that on a kind of day-to-day level? In the fact that we all have conditional bias, we all hold. Nobody can say that they don't. So how can men address that of themselves or of others in the workplace?
I think you can almost go too far, and I don't mean too far as in be too helpful, but I mean almost you know, putting women on a pedestal, or you know, giving women women's roles, you know, HR, admin, organizing people, that sort of stuff. It seems to happen by default. So I think there's a need to check yourself in that sense, because I think if you go too far, you'll be patronizing and QED inherently patriarchal about women. And so I think that's one point, and I think that's quite a niche group of people. I think on the other side, it's a question of inclusion. It's a question of the built environment as a sector, as you've said, has a historically male-dominated pattern. So people in that space feel the need to behave in the same way. So successful men and women that I've seen are exceptionally good at playing that game, specifically of interrupting, talking over, getting their point in first, being the loudest, having something to say, or you know, always being there. And I don't think that helps, to be honest. You know, we need those people, and we need to be assertive, and we need to tell people what we think. But we need to be. I'm thinking about meetings, and I'm thinking about organisations. We need to be mindful of our team. You know, if we're including people, we need to include them, and we need to hear from them. So introverts, extroverts, everybody, you know, on your personality, not everybody's going to be comfortable in the same situation. Some people shine in different ways, and we need to look around our meetings.
I agree. It's very difficult to do, isn't it? I mean, you know, we've got a very technical, very kind of pressured environment that we work in, and you know, the human brain is only capable of so much. I mean, in that kind of team environment, when you're kind of busy thinking about your contribution, your technical and professional contribution, how easy is it to kind of take that kind of wider view and look at the team and check that people are kind of contributing to their full potential, and that the team is gaining from the insights of all these different people? Is that easy for you to do?
I mean, that might just be me. Yes, I'm very, very conscious of what's happening in a social interaction, and you always get people in meetings who always are there and don't speak, and that could be for a variety of factors. Number one, they have nothing to say, which is okay, that's fine. And I think almost the COVID situation has been helpful in that sense of we have to have more virtual meetings, and so the kind of social dissonance that's created has made us all be a little bit more mindful of how we're interacting just on a daily basis. And I think we need to extend that, and we need to maintain that mindfulness of what are we asking, who are we asking. They're all here for a reason. Let's make sure that we're asking them their thoughts, and that we are promoting people to contribute. And that is a general thing, because I suffer with that sometimes. If I'm not 100% confident on a meeting subject matter, or I don't really know the social situation, I can get quite anxious about dealing with the strong characters in the room. So I think it's being mindful of yourself, as well as being mindful of the people around you and how you're feeling, and working with it and doing something about it. It takes nothing. It's just what do you think?
Earlier, we were talking about he was talking about how focusing on we need to focus more on relationships necessarily, because BIM is taking a lot of work from us in a way. It's kind of doing that kind of cognitive, that mental processing of a lot of data, which we now don't, and drawing, which we don't actually have to do. But just, you know, as we move into a kind of digitalized world, perhaps this is the place where there's now room in our minds to kind of get better understand the social and personal aspects of how we do construction and how we collaborate to produce this complex thing. But then there's a question, and as I know we've talked about it before, there's a question that bugs me. It's kind of a devil's advocate kind of question, which is, I love this idea of allies, because I don't see equity as gender equity as a women's problem. It's a cultural problem, it's an industry problem, and we're not going to get anywhere if kind of men don't subscribe to that view. But there's a little bit of me, the stubborn bit of me, kind of says, hang on, I don't need that help. I don't need an ally. I don't need that help from men. You know, women can absolutely do it on their own. We shouldn't be kind of, there's something kind of dissonant about wanting equity and then asking men for help. So what for you, how would you describe the role of being an ally and how that is different to that kind of patronizing, here you go, love, let me give you a hand kind of approach, which is obviously not what we're talking about here. How do you see that role on, you know, playing out in practice for you?
Well, first of all, I feel like I could be a better ally. You know, there have been situations where I've seen, you know, the kind of the woman gets the woman job or the woman is talked over and I've not said anything, social and professional situations. I like to think I'm better at that, but I think that is something about your personal morality. I think it is a moral question, and you need to, you know, for me, the moral imperative is that equity. It is that opportunity for people to, you know, fulfill their potential. And it's really, I think it's really sad that there are all sorts of groups of people whose opportunities are denied. I was thinking about, you know, if you look at who has won Nobel Prizes, this is a total tangent, but it's not at all, but it is, who have won Nobel Prizes, and you could say, and I have heard it said, you know, this means this race, this religion, this gender is better than all of you. And I think that's really a demonstration of opportunity. And I think we are missing out. We aren't missing out on a person in the workplace telling us a little bit that our little insight that we knew. We're missing out on pivotal characters of history, and we are, you know, I mean, not to be too much of a doomsayer, but I feel like our entire species is on the verge of you know, very dangerous times for our existence. It's just my personal view, and we need every shoulder to the wheel to overcome it. And it isn't going to be one solution. And I think that's the thing, is that it was like David was saying earlier, you know, if you have a homogenous group, actually no, and you said it as well, Jenny, if you have a homogenous group, you get homogenous results. And we are faced by numerous challenges that we need new answers to these questions. And it's not even a question, it's just we need new answers. And so we need to be asking new questions, and we need to make sure everybody has an opportunity to answer.
That's great. That's fantastic. Well, great way to finish that, Henry. Yeah.
Off the top of my head.
We are missing, it was very good. We are missing out if we don't kind of attend to this now. I think that's come through all three sessions today, that, you know, if we don't kind of attend to this now, then we're actually disadvantaging those future generations, not in just kind of social way, but in a moral way, you know, and also in terms of the excellence of the buildings that we ultimately create. And all those three things are completely interlinked. So I think that's an absolutely fabulous series of ideas there. I think there's, unfortunately, I could have continued talking to you for another hour, obviously, Henry, but I'm going to have to close it. We just need to kind of find a couple of minutes just to squeeze in some questions if we can. So if the other panelists, if you wouldn't mind switching your mics on, I've got a couple of questions that I think relate back to some of the presentations, but I think I'll probably go to Simon with this one, actually, if that's all right. Simon, would you like to switch your microphone on?
Okay.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask about recruitment practices and procurement practices. How realistically can we practically change these to support the kind of gender equity that we're talking about? Because that's one practical action that men can adopt, is to look at their procurement and recruitment practices and see if they're fit for purpose for this future world. So, Simon, have you got any views on that?
Well, we certainly wouldn't turn anyone away for being female, that's for sure. And yeah, many of our best candidates are female that I've seen, particularly in this part of the world, because if you have some of the smartest, hardest working people I've worked with have been female and from mainland China, because by definition, because of just culturally the way things work, you know, men are favored and all that kind of thing. So when you do get women that are working in architecture and construction, they work bloody hard, and they've got there by merit. Essentially, they've not got there because they know the right people or anything like that. It's usually because they're just grafters. So I've been really, yeah. It's kind of because they're sort of like flowing against, pushing against the flow, you know, against the current.
Yeah, Dave, so you got any views on
that? Jenny, I'm afraid I'm going to give my apologies. I'm actually due on stage in another conference in 30 seconds, so I'm just going to say thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, well, actually, it brings us up to 10 o'clock there, so I think it's probably a good time to draw that to the close, and just to thank all our panelists, David, Simon and Henry, for an absolutely fantastic discussion. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the Women in BIM's next webinar. Have a great day and goodbye.
You too. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good day. How do I turn this off?